All right, everybody. Welcome back to Strongman Personal Finance. I finally found some free time to do some of these videos. Now, if you have any personal finance questions or accounting questions or whatever, shoot me an email and I'll give you a personalized anonymous video response answering your question. And it's free of charge. Now, I've been pretty busy lately. So if you've sent me a question and I haven't answered it, just shoot me a reminder email and I'll get to it. I've just had a lot going on. So I'm not trying to blow you off. But anyway, I have a question from somebody who will call Mr. K. He said, "Hey, Strongman. So here's a list. I know you are a CPA and work in government accounting, and I was hoping you'd give me some insight as to what I ought to do with my future. Yes, I am a CPA and I work for the federal government. And I'm not going to tell you where, so you don't stalk me, freaking weirdos. Basically, where should I go after PricewaterhouseCoopers or whatever? It's like a public accounting firm. I forget the name. I know I will have a lot of options, but the only thing that appeals to me is to be a controller at a small company working 40 to 50 hours tops." Well, here's the thing, man. From what I remember, you're a very young guy. So, I mean, are you really sure you know exactly what you want? I don't know if you work in public accounting already, but if you haven't, and I've never worked in public accounting, but I know for certain that they work insane hours. And I've done a similar thing in the military, and it sucks. It sucks really badly. And your hourly pay, when you actually add up all the hours that you work in public accounting, because like I said, it sounds like the military, what I did, you don't get paid a lot, for all the time you put into it. So I can see why you're probably considering leaving public accounting. I don't know if you're doing it yet. And I mean, I understand that because you don't really have a life, but maybe you're a workaholic and maybe you're going to love doing public accounting because you stay in long enough. If you survive, you can become a partner and then you make bank and then you get to go and schmooze clients and whatever partners do and yell at like younger people or lower people. But yeah, you're not going to really know what you want until you actually do it. So, I mean, if you're planning to start at public accounting, that's a good place to start because they'll pay for your CPA, or at least some of them will. And you'll get a lot of really good experience, learning actual accounting instead of just doing it out of a textbook. So you're thinking about becoming a controller once you leave public accounting. And then you said, do you think the government is a better route in the long run? Why? I'd really appreciate if you could talk about things like compensation, benefits, work-life balance, etc. And here's the thing. Okay, yeah, that's all you wanted to know. So regarding the government, there's multiple layers of government that you can work for. You can work for like a city, you can work for a state, and you can work for the federal government. Now, I personally recommend the federal government, and that's who I work for because the pay and benefits are way better in the federal government than you're going to get at most state governments. Now, I'm sure some states have good benefits, yada, yada, yada. But the federal government has a lot more power, a lot more taxing power, a lot more money. So they're able to afford to pay federal employees way more. Now, there's some government agencies, and I'm talking specifically about accounting here. The agency where I work at, we automatically get promoted to what's called a GS-13. Now, government employees are paid on the GS scale, and the lowest rank is GS-1, and the highest rank is GS-15. Now, where I work, I get automatically promoted as long as I'm not incompetent and I actually am deemed worthy by my supervisors. I'm automatically promoted to GS-13. Now, where I live, and remember, federal government employees are paid differently in every location. But where I live, a GS-13 makes about $92,000 a year, something like that. And then every year, you get a 3% raise for 3 years. And then the next 3 years, or the next 2 years, or you get a raise every 2 years. And then eventually you get a raise every 3 years. So if you're stuck at GS-13, for example, you're probably going to cap out at like $115,000, $120,000 a year. But that's on top of all the benefits you get. Now, the pay is that's just compensation, but you also get a lot of leave. You get a lot of annual leave. You get basically every federal holiday off. Now, when you first start working for the federal government, you're going to get 4 hours of leave for every pay period. So you work 2 weeks, you get 4 hours. Once you do, I believe, 3 years of service, then you get 6 hours of leave every pay period, every 2 weeks. And then once you work for the government for like 15 years, you get 8 hours of leave. So the longer you work there, the more leave you're going to accrue, which if you're getting a day off every 2 weeks, in my opinion, that's pretty freaking good. And that doesn't include weekends. So if you work for the government for 15 years, I mean, you're basically getting 10% of your time off. Every time you work, 10% of that time off, you earn some leave, which is pretty good. On top of that, you also get sick leave. So basically, you have to use it to, go to the doctor or whatever. You get 4 hours of sick leave every pay period, and that doesn't change regardless of how long you've worked for the federal government. That's also pretty good because you can just bank it up, bank it. And when you retire, you can actually use your sick leave to bolster your pension. Now, moving on to the pension, it's kind of complex for the federal government, but basically you're roughly going to get 1% of your final salary or final 3 years of salary averaged out or something like that for every year you work. So if you work for 30 years and you meet all the requirements, and it can get a little complex, so don't quote me exactly on this, but if you work for 30 years, you're going to get roughly 30% of your final salary. Now, if you work past, I believe it's age 62, you actually get 1.1%. So a lot of people are incentivized to work till they're 62 because they take all their years, they multiply that by 1.1%, and then they multiply that based on their final average salary over, the last couple of years. So you can expect probably 30 to 40% of your final pay will be your pension. On top of that, you get the thrift savings plan, which is the federal government's 401k. The thrift savings plan allows you to contribute $19,500 every year, and you get a 5% match, a 5% matching contribution. And your balance will build pretty quickly when you're contributing to the TSP. Now, inside the TSP, you have 5 index funds that you can invest in. There's the C fund, which is the S&P 500. There's the S fund, which is the rest of the U.S. stock market. It's mostly small stocks. There's the I fund, which that allows you to invest internationally, excluding emerging markets. So when you invest in the I fund, you're buying Japanese stocks, European stocks, stuff like that. Then they have the G fund, which is basically a special fund for government employees. It's basically short term. Well, I wouldn't say it's short term, but it's like government debt. And then you have the F fund where you can invest in corporate debt, stuff like that. So you have a decent amount of options for your federal TSP. And I think it's an amazing benefits because the fees are almost zero and you're getting broad exposure to the majority of the world. The only downside of the TSP is that you're not getting exposure to emerging markets. So you're not going to be investing in China or Russia if you really want to invest there. There's some places that are excluded from the TSP. That's pretty good. On top of that, you also get healthcare benefits. The federal government, I believe, pays, I think it's 60-something% or 70% of your premiums. So you're not going to be paying that much for healthcare. You're also going to have to pay roughly 4%. I think it's 4.4% of your paycheck into your pension. So the pay's pretty good, but you're going to have some deductions. If you're contributing to your TSP, you got to automatically contribute to your pension, your healthcare, your dental, stuff like that. A lot of stuff is going to come out of your check. But if you want to top out at GS-13, and that's not even considering supervisors, you can work 40 hours a week. That's all you're going to work in the government. And if you work more, then you can do credit hours or stuff like that. It actually gives you great work-life balance. I literally work from 8 a.m. to 4:30 p.m. every freaking day with a 30-minute lunch break. And then after that, if my work's not finished, I'll just finish it the next day. As long as you get your stuff done, there's not going to be a problem. So you're going to have fantastic work-life balance. Now, you compare that to being a controller at a small company. Yeah, you're going to be paid way more. You're probably not going to have a pension. You're going to have a lot of responsibility, and you're going to work more hours. But, I mean, it's not the end of the world if you want to stay in the private sector because there's a potential to make more money working for the private sector. Now, if you're ambitious in the government, in the federal government at least, that's where I know a lot more about it because I work there. You can actually, compete for supervisor positions. So the GS scale tops out at 15. Now, a full career GS 15 in my area would make about $160,000 a year. And that's where you're kind of a top level supervisor. That's pretty good, in my opinion, for working 40 hours a week. And then if you're really ambitious, you can compete to become the CFO of your local organization. And they make, I mean, I guess they can make up to almost $200,000 a year. So if you want to make it that high, or you can possibly get promoted that high, you can make up to $200,000 a year. Now, if you're curious, you're wondering, or you have an idea of where you want to live, you can actually look up the GS scale in your local area, because the GS scale pays differently based on your location. And you can see roughly how much you're going to get paid. But for a lot of agencies, the typical accountant will top out at GS 12, and then you compete for promotions. Where I work, you top out at GS 13, and then you can compete for supervisor positions for 14 and 15. So it's a pretty good deal. Now, the downside is it can be hard to get into the federal government, because they have a lot of like veterans preference, spousal preference, stuff like that. So there's going to be a lot of veterans, disabled veterans, that are going to get priority over you. But that doesn't mean that you can't apply for a federal government job. Now, if you want to apply for a federal government job, you have to go on usajobs.gov. That's where you can go and look, and it'll kind of tell you, okay, here's a promotion potential for your job. Here's what you're going to do, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That's where you can apply. But I mean, if you're a CPA and you're coming out of, some public accounting firm, I mean, you have a shot of getting a federal job. You have to apply. Now, I wouldn't recommend you work for state or local governments for accounting. You're not going to get paid nearly as much as a federal accountant. And in my opinion, the benefits are just not as good. Like, a lot of people don't even have pensions anymore for the state government. So if you're going to do government, only look at federal, unless you can find some amazing deal. I mean, I don't know everything about everything, but in general, the federal government's better. So that's that. The federal government's pretty good. Got great work-life balance, great leave benefits. When you have a child, you can actually give up to 12 weeks off for paternity leave, paid, which is awesome. Like, who gets that? You got a pension, so you can retire. You have the TSP with a 5% matching contribution and great funds to invest in. Healthcare, dental, vision, all that stuff is taken care of. And you're only working 40 hours a week, and it's really not that stressful. So I highly recommend the federal government. And it actually allows you, let's say you do get a federal government job. You're so well rested from only working 40 hours a week. You have time to exercise. You have time to do stuff outside of work, like what I'm doing right now. If I worked for public accounting, I don't know how I would have time to do YouTube. I don't know how I would have time to tutor after work, because I would be so exhausted from working crazy hours and, stuff like that. So I would highly recommend the federal government. That's it for that. Does anybody have any questions? Did you see that the crypto was stolen in Turkey? Oh, yeah. Didn't Turkey outlaw cryptocurrency? I hope America does the same thing. I didn't know, Jay, I didn't know the bot spoke. That's crazy. You're a very advanced bot. All right, that's it, guys. Unless you have any questions, you can email me. Please like the video, subscribe if you haven't already. I may do another video. I have to tutor in 40 minutes, but I may put something up. Maybe I'll dump on crypto, or, look at Robinhood or something. But please like the video. I know it's hard. Hit the freaking like button and subscribe. I'll see you guys in a little bit.